Hello everyone, I am Nandan Kakaria. I am from ICT 19. Today I am going to present on the topic of distributed file system in cloud computing. So what is a file system? File system basically contains the files and directories, which is a higher level of abstraction, which prevents users and processes from dealing with directly disk blocks and memory blocks. So what is a drawback of traditional file system that we are using? It stores the data as a single block. Okay, it has a slow data retrieval. It has a sequential access of the file, which makes the slow to read and write the data. It is a less reliable and it cannot be used to store the large files. Suppose we want to store the file of 1 terabyte in, but the disk space we have is only of 10 GB, so we cannot use the traditional file system to store it. Okay, so evolution of the storage model. First of all, we were using the manual file system. Then we came to the centralized file system, which is the database management system. Then we move into the distributed file system, and currently we are using the decentralized. And in future, we will be using the decentralized file systems. Okay, what is a then computing evolution? Okay, first of all, we were using the single core machines. Then we moved to the multi core machine. Currently, we are using clusters of processor, grid of clusters. Then we are also using the parallel processing. We are using the algorithm like MapReduce and distributed file system, and then the cloud computing, which is a Google, Amazon, AWS, S3. Okay, so what is a distributed file system? The traditional file system of the operating system is not appropriate to store and process large files. In such cases, we use distributed file system. Distributed file system stores any data file by dividing into the several blocks. It works on the master and slave architecture. The data block is replicated into different slave nodes to avoid data loss when any slave node fails. It has the faster data retrieval and parallel access of the nodes. Okay, Hadoop is the example of distributed file system. So in Hadoop distributed file system, files are broken into the blocks of 128 MB. A file can be made of several blocks and stored across a cluster of one or more machines. Each block of the file is replicated across the machine to prevent the data loss. Okay, so Hadoop also uses the master slave architecture. Okay, the master node is also known as the name node, and the slave node is also known as the data node. Okay, so HDFS stores metadata and file data separately. Metadata is file metadata such as permissions, modification, access, disk space, etc. HDFS stores metadata on a dedicated server called name node or master node. Application data are stored on the slave node or data node. All the nodes are fully connected and they communicate with each other using the transmission control protocol at the transport layer. Working of name node or master node. So the name node maintains the operation like opening, closing, renaming files and directories. It does the mapping of file blocks to the data node. It has the authorization and authentication. It does the authentication of the users. It replicates the missing blocks. It checks the health status of the data node. HDFS keeps the entire master node in RAM, which allows the faster execution and faster access to the metadata. Okay, so what is the working of data node on slave node? The data node is mainly responsible for serving read-write operation request from the file system client. It is responsible for block creation, deletion, and replication as instructed by the master node. It sends the block reports periodically to name node. It also sends heartbeat to the name node to confirm that the current data node is operating, and it stores the block of the file traditionally. So in the data node, we use the traditional file system only to save the file. Okay, so how the read operation is work in Hadoop file system. So suppose as a client want to read the content of file, so it will get the block location using the name node. Name node will return the block number to the client. Now client will access the blocks from the data node, and it will get the data using the read operation. Okay, what failure recovery? Failure recovery. If a data node fails, name node will notice it and it direct the other data node to duplicate the data to replace the failed node. But what happens if the name node gets corrupted or it gets failed so in such cases we maintain the log of metadata. We also create the checkpoint, which is the persistent record of metadata saved in native file system of the local host. Name node initialize the namespace image from the checkpoint during the restart, then replace changes from the journal until the image is up to the date with the file system's current state. So it is all about the distributed file system. Thank you.